So this is my first YouTube video. Just made the channel today, and I figured it'd be good to post an intro as my first video, and kind of like also like what brings me here. And what brings me here is so many fucking endings. So many endings that it has to be time for a new beginning, right? 2024 was such a mixed bag in my life. Good things happened, bad things happened, so much loss, but a lot of new beginnings also. Career-wise, personally, learning so much about self-destructive behavior and how to not self-destruct. We need to deconstruct ourselves to rebuild. And I really would like to think that this coming year is the rebuild. And yeah, so this year I lost my brother unexpectedly. This is actually like a memorial tat for him. Still working through that one. And I had said this about myself, that I am a healer of hearts. And I have been able to put myself back together every which way, which I'm really proud of. Who you see today is not the person that I have been. I'm very much learning to be a new person. And nobody ever talks about that. How it's going to take time learning to be a new person, changing our mindsets, instilling habits and letting those habits take root. All of those things are really difficult to do. And if it were easy, more people would do it. I know there's a lot of self-help books out there and other people that are probably talking about the same thing, but you really don't hear that much about the negative stuff about it. It's just like, oh, just change your mindset, be positive. It's more than that. So much more than that. That's somewhere to start. But yeah, a little bit about me. I would say that my life took its biggest turn 5 years ago, when I decided to blow up my whole life. Everything that I knew, everything that I was so comfortable with, I decided to just blow up my life. And by blow up my life, I mean I was married. I was married to my high school sweetheart, together 15 years, and married about 4. And I can't say that it's not like all of it was bad, like everything, but during the course of those 15 years, we had an official breakup one time. And we were kids, and that was kind of like our thing for like having waiting so long to like get married. We're like, oh well, we're just kids. Like that was just, us getting to know each other. That didn't really count, we would say. But then I also would be like, I'm not gonna wait 10 years for you to marry me. And he didn't want to marry me. I gave him an ultimatum. I said, let me go or marry me. And he didn't want to let me go, but he didn't want to marry me, but he married me. And the wedding was just a shit show, which I think was like foreshadowing. And I was just a lot of foreshadowing. I remember like getting really drunk towards the end of it, because I was just like so stressed out. I'm like, I want this night to be over. And then I had fun. But yeah, there was so many times when we both should have called it, whether it was him or me, but we just couldn't let go of each other, because there was a lot of safety in having somebody there who, said that they loved you. But it was always words, and there was never any action behind those words. And I've always been a driven person. Especially when it comes to, career and work, I can get the lay of the land and then see my route. Like, okay, that's a place I can grow, or this position comes after that position, that's another way to escalate. Or if I get this cert and do this one thing, then I can get in that way. Or I've always been, I'm well spoken. I'm well spoken and I'm fucking smart. My downfall was adopting these parts of me from childhood that told me that I wasn't enough, that I wasn't that smart, that I don't really know anything. And the last 5 years, I've been showing myself that that's just not the case. I've done so much in fucking 5 years by myself, more than I did in a relationship with someone. And I felt like ever since I was like in high school, I'm Hispanic, first gen Mexican American, and a lot of that, what that really actually means in the world is we had to figure out a lot of shit on our own, because our parents were figuring shit out on their own as it came. And a lot of, if you didn't have older siblings, you are the one probably raising your family. And there's so much that goes into that too. And so first gen Mexican American, I felt like I didn't have a lot of options. Like I said, I didn't really feel smart enough to like go to college, and I didn't know what I wanted to do if I went to college. I envied people that went straight to college after high school, because I'm like, wow, they know what they want to do. Like, oh, that career path sounds so cool. Like, nobody finished. Most people didn't finish what they set out to do. And I'm the type of person that if I don't know what I want to do, then I just don't do it at all, because I'm kind of an all or nothing type of person. So at that time, I didn't know what I wanted to do. No one told me like, hey, you can go to college and just, do some general ed until you figure it out. And like, I think it was like 3 months before high school ended that my mom's like, are you going to college? And like, I remember feeling angry, like, this is a conversation you should have asked me 4 years ago, but I didn't say that. I was just like, no, I'm just going to keep working. And that's what I did. I just kept working. I was working at a collection agency, and I just kept working. I climbed the ladder, made it over to corporate, and made a career out of it. And then you learn a lot too about the real world that way, that you give so much to a job, and at the end of the day, you're just numbers on a sheet. And when push comes to shove, there's no problem with people just firing you or doing what they need to do to push their own agenda. Again, all a learning lesson. Like I said, I got to corporate. I got to sit I had a cube right outside of like, all the bigwigs. So I would hear some shit. I would hear a lot of things, and I learned very quickly that way through observation. So I ended up in a relationship that long, 15 to age 30, because I felt like marriage was my only option. And being someone, I was so scared to do anything alone. I didn't like being alone. I had a sister who's closer to my age, so growing up, it's like I always had a sister around. There was always someone around to where I didn't have to be alone. And I didn't think that I could do life alone. And I remember thinking like, well, if I get married, like, we're going to build so much together. We're going to get the house, the kids, and all of that stuff. I can't do this alone. And then, he said that those were what he said, that he wanted the things that I said that I wanted. And when push came to shove, he really didn't. And I will say this, because I'm going to be completely honest about my whole story. Our tipping point involved another person. If you ask him, he will allude to the fact that I cheated on him. I never did. I never cheated physically on him. Never did. Now that I hate the bastard, well, I don't even hate. Can't say hate, because hate denotes effort, and that I don't want to put any effort towards feeling any type of way about him. He irritates the fuck out of me. So part of me is like, I kind of wish I would have cheated, but I didn't. And the crazy thing is, it's like I didn't realize how lonely and alone I felt in that relationship until someone that was as lonely and alone came into my life. I took this job that I didn't want to take. On his behest. We had just moved into our second place together. We had, rewind a little bit. We moved into this little studio in this part of town that I had told myself that I would never live in. But for him, I lived there. I settled. Because it's what came up. It's what we could afford. Like, you know, we didn't want to move in with my parents. Like, that was one rule we had. And so I lived in the part of town that I said I would never live in for him. And so when we moved into like a bigger place, let's just say it was like a duplex thing. We heard about it through his gardener. And it was a 1-bedroom versus our studio, and it had a yard. We had a dog at the time, a big golden retriever, my pick. I named him too. So I hope that stings a little. Yes, I named him too. So it had a yard, it had a garage, which was really important to him to have his own space so that he could make music. And so we moved into this new spot, and it wasn't a lot more than what we were already paying at our space. So it was in the budget. And we moved there, and 2 weeks later, I want to say, like, after moving, I lost my job. And it was a job that I fucking hated. I think I only lasted there like maybe 3 months because everything was so like archaic, and I'm the type of person, like, they didn't even know how to use like Outlook calendar, and I'm like, what? Like, you want me to print this and then put it on a magnet on the Anyways, it was not the place for me, and I was laid off. And I remember coming home, and we had just had a conversation, like, I want to say like a week prior, and it was about having kids. And, you know, he really wanted kids like the first year we were married, and I was like, let's get a dog. And this is probably like maybe the 3rd year we were married. And so I come home, the week prior, we had that conversation about kids, and I was like, hey, you know, I saw how hard it was for my sister to like leave her little 3-month-old baby, you know, in my care, and having to go back to work. Like, that looked really hard. I don't want to go through that. If I have children, I want to take a year off work at least, you know, raise this little thing. And, you know, and he was like, yeah, of course, you know, like, I can make that happen. And I was like, you'd be able to hold it down for like a year for us? And he was like, yeah, of course. So then I come home after I lost my job, and I tell him like, hey, got laid off today. And he thought I was lying. And then I just see like fear wash over his face. And I was just like, so is it cool if I like chill for a while, you know, coast on that unemployment? And he just looked so fucking worried. And I'm like, oh, okay. And he never verbally said like, no, you can't, or anything like that. I was just like, okay, well, I'll start looking for a job. So then it was like maybe 2 months. I feel like it was like not very long. And I mean, like, I was still unpacking things. Like, that's how fresh we were into moving into this place. So like, it was on me to like make the home and unpack all these things, which I was not looking forward to. And also in the meantime, like, hunting for a job. And I got an interview at this place that I really wanted to work at. And it was a construction company that does like luxury build outs for really, really high-end brands. And I remember walking into that place and sitting in the conference room and thinking, wow, this is the prettiest conference room I have ever been in. And I loved it. But I didn't get the job. They told me that we really like you. You just don't have enough experience. Go get some experience and come back. I didn't get that job. And I was really bummed. And I was going on a bunch of interviews, and just nothing was working out. And honestly, a lot of the places were like dingy little places that didn't belong. Places that I didn't belong. I was just grasping at straws, trying to get anything and everything, and it just wasn't landing. And then my sister was a manager for a company at this time, and she was like, hey, we have a position, like you can come work here. And I was like, I don't want to. And then I told I think she had probably mentioned it to my ex, and then I mentioned it to him, and then he was like, and I was like, and I remember telling him, give me more time, with like tears in my eyes, like, I don't want to take this job, like give me more time, I can find something, like just give me more time. And he just didn't even look at me, and was just, we had this very like almost telepathic connection, which made it so hard, I think, which was the reason that it was so hard to leave. You get so entangled in a person's energy, and then growing up together, then, going through like experiences, you don't even have to really talk. And he wasn't very expressive, so I really did have to just go off like feeling. And yeah, so he wouldn't even respond when I said, give me more time, I just need more time, I really don't want to take this job. And that job ultimately, though, is what freed me. I took this job, and I remember getting a call back from that place that I interviewed at that I really wanted. And they were basically offering me like a job at a very like, I don't want to say like, at a very like starting level. And from what it sounded like, it was already pretty much what I was doing at the company I was currently with. And in those like couple weeks that I had been working there, I really felt like I really bonded with the people around me. They were so welcoming and kind, and I'm so grateful for those people, because they just took me under my wing, took me under their wing, kind of told me what was up with the lay of the land, and were really fucking supportive, because I was starting in a new industry that I didn't know anything about. So that's why I stayed. I always stay like when the energy's good and the people are good. And yeah, so ultimately I ended up taking this job, and I turned down that offer when they called me back. But see, when I said give me more time, life could have been so fucking different. But here we are. So I didn't end up taking that other call, and I told them like, thank you, but not at this time. I did take another job, and I'm pretty happy here. So then in 2019, I took another position within that company, and I started working with technicians, and I was in charge of like their schedules and sending them wherever. And I made really good friends with this guy, who I would schedule for. And it started super innocently. It was just like, just a friendship. You got my back, I got your back. Like, he was like, well, like, thank you so much for like making an efficient fucking schedule. Like, this actually makes sense, all the routes that you're sending me to. I'm like, okay, yeah, like, that's me. I like to organize and be efficient. And then I remember he had like messaged me on the company phone, like saying like, hey, like, be careful, like, this guy is like talking shit about you, like, you made one mistake on his thing and he went to go tattle on you, just so you know. And I was like, oh, okay, well, thanks. And then there was another time where I guess this particular technician who had warned me was talking shit on a group text message, which he shouldn't have been talking shit there. But I overheard the guy that had been talking shit about me come into the office and tell our boss about what he was doing. So I called him, and I'm not going to drop any names here because, I don't know, small world. And I called him and I told him, like, hey, be careful because so and so came into the office and I guess you're on some message thing and he came and like tattled on you. So be careful or start another thread or don't talk shit about the boss. Like, he's gonna come tell the boss. And I remember him telling me, like, oh my god, thank you so much, like, for telling me, like, hey, is it cool if I get your number in case anything else comes up? And like, me not thinking anything of it in the moment, I was like, yeah, sure, here it is. And I said I gave him my phone number. And the moment that I hung up on that call, I said, oh fuck, this is not good, this can't be good. And then I just went about my life. And we started text messaging, like, I think almost every day. And it just started off about music, and then we dove into spirituality. And he brought me back to a place that I had shut down. After I got married, I've always been the type of person that looked at life like, well, what can this mean? And I remember when I got married, that was like 2015. We drove up into our little studio and we're outside and we're still in the car. And I remember looking at something and I can't remember what it was exactly, but I remember there was trash cans and there was this tree with a lot of leaves, and it was around fall. And I remember saying to him, to my ex, what could that mean? And he just looks at me and he's just like, it doesn't mean anything. Like, almost frustrated and annoyed. He's just like, some things just don't mean anything. Things don't always have to mean something, Julie. And I just remember like thinking like, oh my god, he just threw a wrench in the whole fucking, in the wheel cogs of my brain, because that never even crossed my mind. And it made me so sad. And I started falling into like a gradual depression, because I think this had to have been probably like, yeah, the first year we got married, and I started falling into like a gradual depression and thinking like, one day I just shut it literally down in my head. I said, the way that I think brings me more questions than it does answers, so maybe he's right. Maybe like my whole way of looking at life is wrong. And I basically shut that spiritual connection off in order to stay with a person who literally would not give anything up for me. If it's something that I wanted, he was hell-bent on not giving it to me. Hell-bent. And he proved that. He's proving that until this fucking day. If it's something that I want, he will make sure that I don't get it. Or he makes the smallest interactions the hardest fucking thing. So I turned off this spiritual connection, and here came this person into my life, and he switched it back on. He is an Aries, by the way. I'm a Libra. This fucking fire sign lit the fucking burners back on, and not in a sexual way or anything like that. It was just like, he brought concepts back that I had been craving. And we talked about the Four Noble Truths, and he was really into Ram Dass, so he talked about him a lot. And it just made all these connections in my mind that were just waiting to be connected again. And I loved it. I loved those conversations and getting heady and talking about all these concepts and things. And I think it had been probably 6 months that we had been messaging and talking back and forth, and he was just like, oh, we've never hung out. And I'm like, no, we haven't. And one day I think I had a day off from work. It was around my birthday, my 30th birthday, and then they had like an early release because I don't know, they just got let go early that day, had meetings, I don't know. But I was like in the area, and like we were talking, and we decided to meet up and smoke some weed together. And I drove over to his place, and once I was outside there, I do remember thinking like, oh fuck, like, Julie, like, you're a married woman, like, this is not good. And I walked in there anyways, and I could feel like the tension, there was like awkwardness, and he felt like, oh, maybe we shouldn't be alone in a room together. We didn't go into his room, we were like in the living room. And I remember we smoked outside of the balcony, and then I think we both kind of felt like, well, let's get out of here, but I still want to hang out. So he was like, hey, let me take you to this spot that I like to go to by the beach. And so we went to this spot that he likes to go to by the beach. And I remember being out there and feeling just so fucking paranoid and so fucking guilty, because at that point then I did feel like, oh shit, I'm doing something wrong. But at the same time, I also felt like I was being like a kid again. Like I was 16 years old and I'm fucking sneaking around, smoking weed with a friend, you know, like there was a sort of innocence to it all. And if you know me, that's exactly what it was. Like, and yeah, and I remember being out there, and he drove us, and we just were like in deep conversation, watching the sunset. It got dark really fast, like, and if you're ever at the beach, like, you're staring towards the sun and it's way fucking dark behind you, but the sun is still setting, so there's light in front of you, but the darkness is behind you. And oh, the darkness was waiting for me at home. And I got home, and I remember it was like around 7, so like inland it was like pitch black, and I went straight to the shower. Doesn't look good, guys. And I would take really long showers, like hour-long showers, and I remember being in there, and then I just get this like, oh shit, my phone. And I get out of the shower, and I go straight to my purse, and he had, like, the phone's still lit. And I'll say this, like, I wasn't trying to hide anything, because he literally had the password to my phone, because we were together so long. Like, he had never looked through my phone, as far as I know, until that day. And I remember, I'll never forget, he was just like, is there something you want to tell me? And I'm like, whoa, you're mad at me? I'm like, why don't you just fucking tell me? Like, I'm holding my phone. Like, why don't you just tell me? And he's just like, who's this guy, like, you're talking to, like, every fucking day, blah, blah, blah. And, like, I even said, I'm like, you went through, like, all the messages. Was there anything sexual at all? Like, I think he took issue with 2 things. He said, oh, you told him he was cute. Because he did ask me if I thought he was attractive. And I was like, yeah, I told him he was cute. I didn't say he was hot, like, oh my god, like. And then he's like, and you also talk to him about stuff that you don't talk to me about. And I'm like, I've tried to talk to you about this stuff, but you don't like to talk about spirituality. In fact, we had a very deep spiritual encounter that we both went through together. It was actually for our anniversary. We went down to Mexico, to this area, and in our room there was orbs floating around for like hours, what felt like hours. And I remember trying to like wake him up because I was a little bit scared, and I think he pretended to be asleep because he was scared. And in the morning I was just like, damn dude, like I couldn't sleep. Like I was like, I couldn't sleep at all. And he just like, oh yeah, those light things. And I'm like, oh my god, so you saw them too? Like, you saw them? And he was like, oh, I don't know, I like thought I was dreaming or something. And the thing is, like, we had a conversation the week before where it was like, he was like, oh, your family, like, they always talk about seeing ghosts and this and that. And he's like, I've never seen anything. I don't think that stuff is real. I'm like, well, it's because you're not open to see. Like, you don't want to see. You don't want to know, so it doesn't present itself. And I remember him just very kind of, like, just saying this kind of, like, sarcastically. Like, oh, I want to see. Please, like, show yourself, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, then we had this experience. I'm like, it did show itself. I was like, it was real, it was happening. And then like I remember I started crying because I'm like, you asked to see and you still won't acknowledge what you saw. So I try to have these spiritual conversations with him, but it just wasn't there for him. I'm pretty sure he's like, I don't know, probably like atheist or something. I don't know. He listened to a lot of death metal, and I was into it too. I mean, you got to know both sides of the spectrum, right? Yeah. So I made this connection with someone that I made connection with someone that spoke a language that I had turned off, and I needed that connection. And I remember like that day changed everything. He threatened to leave me, like right then and then. Right there and then, he threatened to leave me, and I wasn't scared. I felt strangely calm, and I think that's what scared him the most too, that I was so calm about it. He threatened to leave, and I was just like, okay. Like, he even called out the date and the time of death. Like, he called that out, that moment. And I was just like, okay. I accepted it. And I think, like I said, I was in a deep depression, and I was already like, the year before I had told him like, hey, there's something really wrong with us. Like, we need to counseling, and there's something very wrong with us, and it has to do with communication. And he asked me, what do you need? I'm like, I need more time with you. He didn't give me more time with him. But, you know, a person can't give you what they don't have to give. And so after that, he was like, hey, let's go to counseling. So we did the counseling thing, I want to say like a month and a half. And I did it because everyone was like, oh, you know, give it a chance, and, you know, he's such a great guy. And everyone told me, like, he's the best thing that ever happened to you. I haven't met the best thing that has ever happened to me. Actually, you know, I am the best thing that has ever happened to me. I haven't met the guy who's gonna make shit better for us together. But I'm not putting all my eggs in one basket. Ever. But yeah. So I went against the grain. Literally, everyone told me I was making such a big mistake. People even told me that I would go back to him. And I was like, it will be a cold day in fucking hell if I do. Like, there is something seriously wrong with me if I felt the need to go back. And it was like a break. Like, we didn't do the whole going back and forth with each other. No. We had a trial separation, we called it, but we both knew it was over. We had a rule. If you leave, you leave. If you leave, you don't come back. And I didn't go back. I spent 2 weeks on my sister's couch, and then I was like, I need to find a place to live. Meditated on that one, and I'm like, okay, found a place to live. I went to go live off in the mountains. I went to go live off in the mountains. And I really needed that time. I was grateful for that time too. And then the world fucking came to a screeching halt with COVID. So talk about endings and ends of the world. We definitely had an end of days. I won't get into all of that. I'll leave some things to the imagination, I guess. But yeah, I didn't leave him for another guy. I tried to maintain a friendship with this guy afterwards, but it just didn't work out. And I'm glad it didn't. We're never on the same page about big things anyways. Some people have a very negative outlook on life, and I'm just not about that. So that's how this whole fucking journey started. And I have been single ever since. So going 5 years strong in the single life. So that's what brings me here. And the person I am today, like, after leaving him, I sold my truck that I had bought into when I was 18. And I sold that truck, and I got my dream car, which was always a point of contention with us in the relationship. Because I was like, dude, like, sell your car. Like, we can't even put a car seat in there if that's what you want. You know, if you want kids, like, my friend didn't get that car because you can't put a car seat in the back. Like, let's sell your car. Like, we'll put a down payment, you know, and get this 4Runner. And he was just so, like, he didn't see things as ours, us. It was all I. There was no we. But the bank account, he had no problem fucking dipping into. That's a whole different conversation for another time. But yeah, I think he was a covert narcissist, and he really showed his colors after we broke up. And very few people actually saw him for who he is. And yeah, he flipped so fucking quick on me, like, so quick. We were friends, or tried to stay friends for like 5 months after the breakup, just long enough to like, I guess, get things closed out, move out. And I will say this, like, he did help me load things into the back of my truck and strap things in. And I remember when I got that car at 18, my older sister had already gone through a divorce, and I remember her telling me, she's like, well, good thing you have a truck, because for when you leave, you're already ready. You're not going to need his help. And everything happens for a reason. I've really been able to use that. And I left, like, I did. I remember him telling me, like, we had like these really surreal conversations on my way literally out the door. I went home and I packed that duffel bag for my 2-week trial separation or whatever, and he asked me, he's like, if I would have bought you the car, if I would have bought you the house, would you be leaving me? And I said no. I would have lived with you in a box under a bridge if you just loved me as half as much as I loved you. Just half. I didn't even ask for the whole thing. And he told me, he's like, I saw that you wanted to do things, that you wanted to see things, you wanted to travel the world, and you wanted to do things, and I was so afraid of what you would find. And my response, just, I know it broke his heart. I said, I never wanted to do those things alone. I wanted to do them with you. And he held, and I always felt this energy of like, he's holding himself back to hold me back. And he's a really talented musician, and I would tell him, like, there's so much you could be doing. You could be producing music, you could be selling beats, you could be actually doing shows, but you're such a perfectionist, you're holding yourself back. And I remember telling him, I'm like, what? Do you think I'm gonna run off with the drummer or something? And I don't know, maybe that would have happened. He was always afraid that I was gonna run off with someone, and in the end, like, I didn't run off with someone, but in the end, it was someone who fucking came and woke me the fuck up. Hey, Julie, wake the fuck up. You don't belong here. And I didn't. That moment was an empowering moment for me. Everyone in my life pretty much stopped talking to me. My friends that I had for like 15 years all got weird because their men felt weird. I sent fucking waves in our fucking friend groups, and yeah, some of those relationships didn't survive. It very quickly ended after like my ending with him. And I'm like, wow, little old me. People are afraid of little old me. I didn't know I had that much power. But yeah, I guess I do. I make some waves. And yeah, some of those relationships didn't last because I didn't talk about all of the bad or like the negative sides of my relationship. And the moment that I started talking about things, it scared them because it resonated with them too. And once you know something and it's spoken out loud, there's a certain power to that. You're speaking things into existence once we say it out loud and it comes out of us, we can begin to heal. And there's no like healing circles, like if you ever have an opportunity to be in one, try it, because there's nothing more profound and more powerful than multiple people, multiple women, all wanting the same thing and bringing that power into one place in order for us to transform that energy and heal. That it's fucking amazing. It's a beautiful experience. Yeah, so that's what brought me here, and I can officially say today that I have no ties whatsoever to my past life now. Every person that I've known that knew me as like my ex last name, I don't have any ties to at all. Like that chapter is very much closed, and I'm going into 2025 very liberated, very free, and that freedom cost a lot of pain. But if I can do it, anyone can fucking do it. If I'm strong enough to overcome like my people pleasing tendencies, my shy nature, God, I am. If old me saw me right now, she'd be like, wow, you're a badass. I can't believe it. You fucking did it. And I'm here to fucking help you by sharing my stories, talking about what helped me, and just letting you know that you're not fucking alone. I could think that's the biggest thing, is that we're not alone even when we feel so alone. There's spirit guides around us. There's people that you influence that you don't even know you influence. And may your words heal another.